Hi, I'd like to share with you a story of how Buddhism changed my life. I was in a pretty rough spot. So, before I get into all that, I want to preface this video by saying I am not a teacher of Buddhism. I am not a teacher of anything. So, take everything I say with as much salt as you need. That being said, I was in a rough spot. I was not having a great time, super depressed. A few things had happened years before that I had trouble accepting. And I just stayed stuck in this dark, emotional, mental place. It was like a black hole. Like all my thoughts were negative. Just I was drowning in it, and life was not the best for me. I just wasted. I don't want to say wasted, but I spent most of my 30s in that dark hole. And towards the end, with a little bit of help, I had some talk therapy help, and that really started me down the path. I had an epiphany, and it was all centered around this idea of acceptance. How I was not accepting the things in my life. I I saw that I was stuck in my deep dark hole because I refused to look at myself. I refused to open my mind to the idea that life was doing things that were above my pay grade. I always thought I knew what was going on. And because of my very rigid way of thinking, I thought I had the answers. I was stuck. I started searching and doing more reading around the idea of acceptance. And then I just started listening to stuff, and I got into a couple Buddhist texts, Western Buddhist texts, not the sutras or anything like that. But I just resonated with the way of thinking, because it was like, what's really going on here? Do you think the world is as you see it? Or do you think you're putting a spin on the world? Like, what's going on? And that became a central question that I asked myself, like, what is going on? And I started to see that the world is nothing like I think it is. Even even in the most simple form, just to look at the world and say, oh, that wall is white. That's not even true. The wall is not inherently white. It's my mind, it's my eyes, my brain that perceives the whiteness of the wall. The whiteness exists within me. It was little things like that that began to open my mind to the idea that, whoa, I don't know what's going on. And that was a really big lesson for me. And a big theme you'll find in Buddhist teachings is that we don't really know what's going on. We're trying to figure out what's going on. That's kind of what it is. It's like a search for truth almost. But we don't know. And we can never really, really know. So we don't get attached to the idea of thinking we know. Because when we think we know, we get rigid. And when something doesn't line up with the ideas we have in our head, we experience pain, suffering. We're like, this is not the way it is. This is not the way it's supposed to be. But if we know, in actuality, we don't know how it's supposed to be, then it gives us this freedom to just surrender a little bit instead of trying to construct our lives in a way that makes us happy, or we think is going to make us happy. We can release control. And this really shifted everything in the beginning for me. When I shifted control and said, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on. I'm not supposed to know what's going on. So why do I have all these ideas that my life sucks now just because X, Y, and Z happened? X, Y, and Z happened. That's just the truth of it. It doesn't have to be a bad thing or a good thing. It just has to be a thing. It just is a thing. So I started to have that epiphany, and then I started reading more. There were lessons there that really helped me. And like I said, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not somebody who's training under a teacher or anything like that. I'm just somebody who reads some texts and is like, that makes sense. That makes me think a little bit. And it's not the answer, quote unquote. So I offer it. And just me delving into Buddhism opened my mind. Like when I started to accept things, it led to all these other things. I started to open my mind to other scenarios. I was a person before that I never believed in God. I was like, nope, that doesn't exist. That doesn't make any sense. This makes much more sense. This is the way it is. I know, pretty arrogant to think I would know those answers, but I was like that. And so, because I didn't believe in God or Christianity, let's say, I would discount everything that was in, let's say, a Christian text. So I wouldn't even entertain the thought that there could be wisdom there that I could learn from, right? And that changed as I started studying Buddhism. Now I have noticed that there's wisdom in everything. There's wisdom to be found. It's up to me to find the wisdom. But if I stay rigid and I say, well, no, this is stupid, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, then I capped myself off. And it didn't feel good to cap myself off. It felt better to be humble and to be like, what can I learn here? And so those were really big lessons. That's how Buddhism changed my life. It continues to change my life. I love that way of thinking, and I think there's a lot of value in it. And I would highly recommend any of you to just pick up a short book by anybody. Thich Nhat Hanh, B. Alan Wallace has a great book. Jack Kornfield, all of these guys from the West, they have a great way to write things, easy to read, and if you resonate with the way of thinking, you can look more into it. And I think you're going to find a lot of value in it. I know I did.